President Trump host an unprecedented and extraordinary roundtable on school violence and the shootings. Many people there in attendance had either been at a school shooting or they lost their loved ones in the school shooting. One of the great powers of the presidency is the power to convene. And this is something we have not seen before, especially on this issue where you had such raw emotion, outpourings of grief, the president listening super intently to all of them, asking about ideas. It was a very emotional and moving day, but it also gave you some hope that there could be some achievement going forward. The president said he's going to have them back and that they would be coming back and in a much better light, meaning that hopefully that their grief would hopefully subside because the government, the president says, is going to act. We're going to take it around the table here, and Jesse Waters, I'll start with you for your thoughts.
America's reached a tipping point on school violence. Some of us were tearing up watching the exchanges. It was a really raw and organic and powerful moment. The president, we know, takes in information verbally. That's how he takes his briefings. You know, he was very impacted when he saw the pictures of the Syrian children gassed. And this was, I think, a moment for him to really take it all in and listen. He talks about being a protector, protecting the border, protecting jobs, and it's now up to him to do whatever he can to protect the schools. And a lot of politicians are all talk and no action, and he's not one of them, I believe, but he wants to take action that's going to have an impact, not just empty action that's not going to solve any problems. He talked about making America great again, but when I interviewed him, he talked about making America safe again. And one of the things that needs to be addressed is school safety. The best moment, I believe, Andrew Pollack, who stood up, I believe he lost his daughter Meadow, said, forget about the gun issue right now. Let's focus first on making schools safe. And there were some great exchanges of ideas, arming teachers at schools, mental institutions, enhanced background checks. I mean, this kid's been suspended how many times? No one really intervened. My father ran a school out in Long Island, and after Sandy Hook, they built fences around the school because you can't have people just wandering into a school. A lot of the teachers and administrators from some of the urban areas, they have metal detectors and checkpoints, which are extremely effective. So that's something to look at, too. And another great moment I thought was when a guy, I believe from Sandy Hook, one of the fathers said, we stopped relying on Washington to fix everything, and we did it ourselves. And we really trained teachers to intervene when they saw a student with problems and then take action aggressively. The best moment, I think, though, too, at the end, the guy just said, listen, we've lost our connections as humans, as Americans. We don't recognize people anymore. We don't see things. We miss signs. And that's the bottom line. When you see something, say something. Americans, we're all one nation, and you just have to care for one another. And I think this is really a starting point for some strong action.
The president talked about, Greg, some concrete things that obviously he's thinking about. One, it was the age at which you can buy a gun that is set federally. He talked about background checks, concealed carry. He mentioned it several times, and that would be people in a school that would have a gun, but you wouldn't know who that might be.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing for me, not just the suggestions, but the tone and tenor of this conversation is incredibly important because, we make jokes about the president viewing his administration as a talk show. Well, so what? That was one hell of a talk show because you've got a bunch of different opinions and a bunch of people sitting there who know the topic and know the topic intimately and expressed suggestions, practical solutions about a horrible problem. And my advice always stands. The biggest obstacle in this debate is trust. The loudest voices do not trust each other. Those were not the loudest voices. Those were the voices that you had to listen to. And what you found there were people who disagreed, but they disagreed civilly. And I was just moved. I thought that this is probably one of the most valuable things I've seen in this administration. I also, to Jesse's point, the thing that got to me was the Daryl Scott talk. His daughter died in Columbine. He's
just recently.
Daryl Scott.
I'm sorry, right. He started the Rachel's Promise.
His point was about connection, and what we saw there was connection. We're too busy in this world of division right now, and what group do you belong to, and the tribalism that infects everything from politics to identity. And what he was trying to say is, we need to connect. We connect in broadband. That's not the real thing. We have community. And the thing is, community means interaction between police and the people they police. It's a community. It's at sporting events. It's at schools. People need to know who's in their community and need to be confident enough. And I think that there was, a binder full of practical solutions there that can be acted upon, and they were presented in a way that was non-threatening to either side.
Yep.
And that's what communication and connection is
We
about.
actually, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we do have the soundbite from Daryl
okay.
Scott in case you didn't hear it earlier. Let's listen.
I just want to share one simple principle with you that we've learned over the years as we've worked with millions and millions of young people. And it comes from something you said last week in your speech, and it was that we must create a culture of connectedness. We must create a culture in which our classmates become our friends. Every single one of these school shootings have been from young men who are disconnected. And we talk a lot about the mental health issues, but it actually goes deeper than that, because there's a lot of mentally ill children that are kind and compassionate. The focus really needs to be on how can we connect.
I think that was powerful for a lot of people. Greg brought that up. We wanted to play that soundbite for you, and Juan will get your reaction.
So I think today was a wonderful day in terms of people hearing voices. Earlier today, you had the students from Parkland who went to Tallahassee, to the state capitol in Florida. They're arguing there that, again, we need action. They're tired of the status quo. And it was an amazing turnout. In fact, I was struck by the idea that these are people who are 15, 16 years old. Most of them were not seniors. In fact, some of them were high school freshmen, but they spoke with such passion, some of them choking back tears to try to express not only their fears, but what they had lost. And similarly, I think at the White House meeting, the ability to hear from young people really strikes me as what's different. It changes the conversation, because you can say, oh, well, these young people don't have any really concrete ideas or better ideas. But I think that they are touching something in the American spirit and saying that we have to find a solution. So when you listen to what was being said, for example, at the White House meeting, which I think it certainly has its publicity angle, I don't think that's where you really get solutions. I think what you hear there is that this goes beyond schools, that people who are saying, my kid's walking home from school, or my kid's walking over to an AP program, or my kid's waiting at the bus stop, and there are just so many guns around. So how do we deal with that? How do you stop that? That's the challenge. But as someone said, we have tons of ideas for solutions. The American people, gun owners and non-gun owners, NRA and non-NRA, agree basically on background checks, on limiting weapons that can become weapons of mass destruction. People agree on arguments about gun safety and preparedness and waiting periods. These are all very concrete ideas that are there. On the mental health side, I think that woman who stood up and said very quickly, most people who have mental health issues are not the ones who are shooting up the place. And that is really a dodge from the difficult issue of dealing with the fact that we have a proliferation of guns, more guns than people in our country. It's crazy.
Kimberly, I'll give you a chance to remark on anything you want.
Thank you so much. It's interesting when I listened today to the students expressing themselves so passionate and eloquent, saying that they wanted to do something about this, that it was the passion and cause of their life, that they weren't going to forget it, so that students can go into school safe. We owe that to the children, the students of America, to make sure that when they go through the school doors in the morning and the bell rings to go sit and pay attention in class, that they're able to pay attention to the lesson and not worry about a gunman coming through the door to kill them. And I want to take a moment to honor the lives of those that were lost and those that gave their lives trying to save others. And in particular, yes, we've talked a lot about the coach who was incredible and all the people that showed incredible valor in the face of tremendous adversity. And instead of cowering in fear, they ran towards to try to save lives, like the junior ROTC members that were absolutely so incredible. Peter Wang, 15 years of age, Alana Apeti, 14 years of age, and Martin Duque, also 14. Imagine being that young and having the presence of mind and selflessness to say that I'm going to stand in the way so that others may live. That, I think, is
Remarkable
what we should be
training, too, from the ROTC for Peter Wang.
Absolutely. And imagine if all the students were equipped with that kind of training and that we gave them the means by which to protect themselves, and we actually made schools a place where people said, you know what, I'm not going to go there to commit an act of violence because it will not be allowed. I will not be able to permeate there and go and do something and commit these horrific acts because they are protected.
Yeah, you know what the media did about that? They blamed the ROTC.
They did?
That the killer was also trained.
Oh.
So
I
they
didn't see that part.
instead of seeing what Kimberly,
Right.
acutely pointed out, this Peter Wang, it was West Point, I guess, has admitted him and the three junior ROTC cadets, or maybe it says Peter Wang, but 3 had died.
Well, he wanted to go to West Point.
Yeah, they gave him posthumous
Yeah.
entrance into the academy. We actually had the sound from Andrew Pollock, who is, Jesse mentioned, daughter Meadow died last week on Wednesday, just a week ago today. Can we play that?
My daughter has no voice. She was murdered last week and she was taken from us. Shot 9 times on the 3rd floor. I'm very angry that this happened because it keeps happening. 9/11 happened once and they fixed everything. How many schools, how many children have to get shot? It stops here with this administration and me. Should have been one school shooting, and we should have fixed it. And I'm pissed, because my daughter I'm not going to see again. She's not here. She's not here. I didn't think it was going to happen to me. If I knew that, I would have been at the school every day if I knew it was that dangerous. It's enough. Let's get together, work with the president, and fix the schools.
His passion is certainly evident, Jesse, but also to have the ability to come to the White House with your sons and to articulate yourself that well and say that you're committed to making sure it doesn't happen again. It was a very strong moment.
Very strong. He really lit a fire under the president. That was the moment, I think, of the entire event that people really began to think, this is never going to happen again. You can never listen to someone talk like that passionately and then forget it a few weeks later. He said something else pretty interesting to me. We protect everything we value in this country with guns. We protect banks. We protect politicians. We protect celebrities. We protect congressmen. Everything we value, we protect with guns. Why don't we protect our children with guns? And the 9/11 analogy is really critical. Every school shooting is a mini 9/11 for that school and for those families and those communities. And to have it happen over and over and over again, we've just reached critical mass in this country, and I think this is going to be the moment.
What about that tipping point, Greg? Do you think culturally it is something where you'll see maybe it'll be difficult to get the legislation through, but it'll happen this year?
I don't know. I mean, we live in a strange time where the news is accelerated so quickly that there are things. I mean, I'm still like, we don't know what happened in Vegas. Like, this fiend was utterly preventable. Yeah. Obviously, we saw how many mistakes. But we still don't know anything about the Vegas thing.
And bump stocks are still okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't think there was a possible way you could have stopped Vegas because we don't even know how long he planned. When somebody plans something, it's going to happen. 3 years. If somebody is smart and has a plan, look, I said this before, 9/11 was the second time, right? It was the second attack on the World Trade Center. Mm-hmm. They went back and they planned another. They tried it once and then they came back and they did it again. As long as there's evil in the world, there will be these incidents and we can't expect them to disappear like that. However, I will say this. These practical solutions are actually practical. I heard emotion, but I also heard rationality.
Yeah.
It wasn't simply people shouting, do something.
Or ban guns.
Ban guns.
Yeah.
What you heard were people that were actually expressing practical, rational solutions to a problem. And that is already, in my mind, progress. And we're actually talking about it. And I would suggest that something like this, I haven't seen anything like this before, but a town hall like this pertaining to other issues like this, where people are intimately involving the president, is an interesting thing and could be something that, again, I go back to Donald Trump. His presidency is a talk show. Maybe that's not so bad because that's the talk show you need.
Well, see, I don't agree because I think you're going to need to have some kind of resolution with the right-wing talk show host and the NRA, the people who will say, "You're taking away my guns."
Well, that goes back to the trust
So
issue, which I think that
when you have
addresses.
a meeting like this, it's terrific in terms of having a cathartic moment. And I think for all of us as a country to hear the pain and the families, to understand, as we were saying, that this is like a 9/11. If it's your child, it's your family. That man standing up there saying he'll never see his daughter again. Why didn't we fix this? That's powerful stuff. But in terms of actually resolving it, I think you got to get people together who will say, let's knock heads. Gentlemen or ladies, we're going to have to make a deal
Well, and I'm
here.
gonna